Hello, beautiful people of the internet. How are you doing today? My name is Jackie and welcome back to my channel. Recently, I read all 6 of Jane Austen's novels. I am a huge fan of hers, and I do not believe she has written a bad book. Every single one of her books I really enjoyed, but today, in this video, I am going to be giving my ranking of all Jane Austen novels. Just a few quick disclaimers before I get started with this ranking. First of all, like I said, I do not think there is a single Jane Austen novel that is bad. Every single one had certain things that I liked about it, things that I loved, things that I didn't like as much. So if your favorite Austen book is low on my list, that is not an attack against you personally, and that is not me saying the book sucks, because I do not think a single one of these books sucks. I think every single one is good, and I think all of them are worth giving a try if you haven't read them already. Secondly, I will not be including Lady Susan in this list because it is a novella, and I also haven't read it, so I really can't rank something that I haven't read. Thirdly, I have read some of these novels only once, so this is by no means set in stone. This is just my ranking based off of my impressions of each book. I might reread one of these books in the future and have a new appreciation for it. That has happened to me before with Jane Austen. So just because I'm ranking something low on this list today doesn't mean that in the future I might not read it again and find some new merits in it and things that I didn't fully appreciate the first time. So this is all just meant to be fun. This is just my personal opinions. It's nothing to get upset about. And if you disagree with me on anything, or you think that I need to read one of these books again, by all means, tell me in the comments. I would love to hear it. Also, since I'm at college right now and I don't have any of the physical books to hold up, I think when I talk about each book, I'm going to put on the screen a Jane Austen meme for you to enjoy, because I don't know about you guys, but I love some literature memes, especially if they come from the SparkNotes Twitter account, which I think is my absolute favorite Twitter account, no exaggeration. To get started with the list, coming in at number 6, my least favorite Jane Austen novel is Northanger Abbey. This was actually the first book that Jane Austen completed. However, it was not published until after her death. It follows our young protagonist Catherine Morland, who gets the opportunity to go to Bath, where she meets the Tilney family and develops a crush on Henry Tilney. She then goes to their estate, Northanger Abbey, and Catherine, who is obsessed with Gothic novels, becomes convinced that there is something spooky and mysterious afoot, and she has fantasies of ghosts and murders galore. The reason that I put Northanger Abbey last in my ranking is because I think it is the one that I would be the least excited to read again, and the one that I would be the least likely to recommend to somebody wanting to get into Jane Austen. I think because this was Jane Austen's first book, it definitely has some missed potential, and I don't think that her writing ability had fully developed, which is totally understandable because the first book that you write is your first time ever doing it. It's not going to be the best one that you write, most likely, because you still have a lot of learning to do and a lot of growth in your writing. I did think that Catherine Morland was a delightful main character. I did like her a lot. However, I feel like the pacing of this book was not great. The ending was so rushed, and I just didn't feel as invested in the characters and the relationship as I do in other Jane Austen novels. This is an unpopular opinion, but I actually really hated Henry Tilney. I found him extremely patronizing and vaguely sexist, which was really disappointing because I saw so many people on Tumblr talking about how Henry Tilney is this totally underrated Austen hero. He's the best of them all. He needs more credit. Like, God, he understands muslin, the perfect man. And I just could not support him at all, and I did not like his relationship with Catherine. It just left a lot to be desired. That being said, do I think this book is horrible? No. And if you absolutely love Jane Austen, then definitely give it a read. Coming in at number 5 on my ranking is Mansfield Park. Mansfield Park follows Fanny Price. She is coming from a poor family, and when she is very young, her parents decide to send her to Mansfield Park to live with with some of her wealthy relations, and the novel just follows Fanny growing up at Mansfield Park among her wealthier cousins and feeling out of place, and how she eventually becomes a part of this family. I do feel like I could like Mansfield Park more than I currently do if I were to read it again, because I think there are good things about it, and I feel like I could have a deeper appreciation if I read the book again. I know that during Jane Austen's lifetime, this was the one that was the most popular, I believe, and was considered her masterpiece, and now it's not as popular. I think the reason that I didn't like this one as much was because it had a very moralistic tone. Fanny can be seen as a poor protagonist by some people because people think she's very boring and she's someone who has very strict moral principles. So she comes across as someone who is very righteous and upright, and she knows what she believes in and she's never going to falter. I don't hate Fanny. I actually like how she is more of a soft and quiet protagonist, and while some people may want to yell at her to stand up for herself, I kind of like that because to me, personally, Fanny is more relatable than someone like an Elizabeth Bennett. I love Elizabeth Bennett, but she's not a lot like me, whereas I think Fanny has a little bit more of my quieter personality. But I think because Fanny is someone who is so strong in her principles, the book can come across as a little preachy, and I feel like sometimes Fanny comes across as too perfect. The romance in Mansfield Park was not one of my favorites. I know that the romance isn't the be-all, end-all of a book, but in a Jane Austen novel, I do like to have a romance that I can root for, and I was not super invested in this one. I also think that the roguish character, I really didn't care about him or his existence that much because I did not believe for a minute that Fanny would ever fall for his charms. And again, that's another fault I see in Fanny being someone who is so upright and so knows her principles. But I do feel like I could read this book again, and I could probably like it more if I read it again. Next on the list, I have Sense and Sensibility. Sense and Sensibility is Jane Austen's first published novel, and it follows two sisters, Eleanor and Marianne Dashwood. After their father dies and their half-brother and his greedy wife kick them and their mother and younger sister out of the family home, they have to move away and start a new life, and there are a lot of romantic hijinks that ensue. The first time that I read Sense and Sensibility, I really thought it was just okay. I didn't like it that much. It was the second Austen I'd ever read, but rereading it this past semester for class, I liked it so much more than I remember liking it the first time. I think reading it the second time, I just had a deeper appreciation for the story. I laughed out loud several times the second time I read it, which I really didn't do the first time. And I honestly think the reason I didn't like it so much the first time was because I was comparing it to what I have as number one on this list, but when I read it again and appreciated it for what it was a lot better than I remembered it being. However, the reason it is still in the middle on my list is because though I do think that Sense and Sensibility does a lot of things well, I don't know if it necessarily has my favorite anything. It doesn't have my favorite romance, my favorite female character, my favorite male character. I will say, I think Willoughby is a really great character. I found him so interesting the second time I read this book. Now, I wouldn't say I like him, but I think he is really interesting and more complex than other Austen characters in his archetype. Now, this is the part where the ranking started to get difficult, and I might have some unpopular opinions here, but what felt right to me, what I finally decided on, was to put Persuasion at number 3 in my list. I know this is a lot of people's favorites, and it is really good. I would definitely recommend it to anybody. There are reasons why I didn't like it as much as the 1 and 2 on my list. So Persuasion is Jane Austen's last novel in terms of when she wrote it, and it follows 28-year-old Anne Elliot. Now, in Regency era England, if you are unmarried at 28, that makes you a spinster. However, Anne did have a marriage proposal in the past. She was going to marry Frederick Wentworth. However, relations convinced her that she should not go through with the marriage because they thought that Anne could do better. Now the Elliot family is low on money, so they decide to relocate to Bath, and that is where Anne reconnects with her former fiance, Frederick Wentworth, who is now a captain, and she realizes that she might still be in love with him, but has she lost her chance forever? And there were many things to like about Persuasion. It had some beautiful lines in it, some iconic lines. I think Anne Elliot is by far the most mature Austen protagonist. I loved her. And the story itself and the writing was the most mature, which just makes sense. It was the last book that Jane Austen completed before her death. I think, though, the reason that I have this at 3 and not at 1 or 2 is more so because of personal preferences. I think that this book isn't as escapist and optimistic for me. It definitely is a little bit more serious. Even the happy ending still has a little bit of a somber tone, which is probably more realistic. However, when I read Austen, I really want something that's going to have a nice happily ever after, something very escapist, and that's just me personally. I do, however, really like the Anne-Wentworth relationship. I feel like out of all Austen couples, they're probably the one where if I had to bet my money on which one of them would have the stablest marriage, I would pick Anne and Wentworth because I just really believe that they are perfect for each other. And what was really cool for me personally was reading this book set in Bath. I did my semester abroad there. If you haven't seen those videos, I will link the playlist down below. And so to read this book and to see these different places mentioned where I could go in the city, it was so cool, and it made the reading experience even better for me. So those were just the minor reasons why I put this at number 3, but I would love to read this one again, and I feel like if I did, I would love it even more. If any of the books on this list are going to change their positions, I think this is the one that's most likely to move up. At number 2 on my ranking is Emma. I loved this book. I really love all of Jane Austen's work, but this one I just loved for reasons I can't even properly articulate. Emma follows our titular character, Emma Woodhouse, who is a beautiful, wealthy woman living in a rural English town, and Emma loves to play a matchmaker. She doesn't need to marry herself because she already has a fortune to inherit, but she likes to set up other people in the town with sometimes disastrous results, and things go very south very quickly when Emma realizes that, damn, maybe she actually doesn't know everything. Who knew? So I just felt like this book was so much fun from start to finish. I can't even properly express why. I just know that when I was reading it, I was having a blast. I thought it was so charming. This book seems, based in my experience, to be pretty polarizing. There are some people who say it's their favorite, and there are some people who can't stand it. I know a lot of people don't like Emma. They think she's obnoxious. Even Jane Austen herself wrote something along the lines of Emma Woodhouse would be a protagonist that only she herself would like. However, I actually like her. Is she very selfish and misguided at the beginning? Yes. But I also found her just really charming in a way. Every single page I was immensely enjoying. I liked the characters, I felt very engrossed in the story, and this is not one that's going to be a very plot-heavy Austen, but this town and these people I was just so engrossed in. I love Mr. Knightley, who is Emma's brother-in-law. Emma's older sister is married to Mr. Knightley's younger brother, and I personally really enjoy the romance in this book. It's a romance that's built out of friendship, and personally, I think those are some of the best kinds of romances, because I think if you are friends first, then that's a really good foundation for a relationship. I know a lot of other people don't agree with me. They don't like the romance, and they don't like Mr. Knightley, but personally, I'm just a sucker for it. I absolutely adored it. Finally, to absolutely no one's surprise, if you have seen any of my videos, you know that I love this book with every fiber of my being. Coming in at #1 in my ranking of all Jane Austen novels is Pride and Prejudice. Am I a little bit basic for putting Pride and Prejudice at #1? Probably. This is Jane Austen's most famous book. Everyone and their mother has heard of it. And it's the one that I think people who aren't die-hard Austen fans have still probably read, but I would argue that the reason this one is the most well-known and the most popular is because it's by far the best. I don't even know if I need to really give a summary of Pride and Prejudice, but I'll try. This follows the Bennett sisters. Elizabeth Bennet is our main protagonist, and the sisters are going to have nothing to inherit because their father's estate has to pass to a male relative. So their mother desperately wants to see all of the girls married off well, and when an eligible bachelor moves into the neighborhood, she sees it as a prime opportunity to get a daughter married off. Elizabeth meets this new bachelor's best friend, Mr. Darcy, and the two of them do not like each other in the beginning at all. However, can love blossom in the unlikeliest of places? I don't even know what to say about Pride and Prejudice because it is my absolute favorite book of all time. Not just my favorite Austen. My favorite book out of any book that I have ever read. I love every single thing about this book. I have read it 3 times, and every time I read it, I find new things to love about it. Elizabeth Bennet is an amazing main female character. She is independent and witty and strong, but still has her flaws, and Mr. Darcy is a character who, while you may not like at first, the more you see of them, you realize that there are deeper layers to him, and I love them both. I love their relationship. My literary OTP, they have the hate to love thing going on, which, chef's kiss. It's beautiful. This book is amazing. It is so well written. The plot is great. It makes me laugh. It makes me happy, it makes me sad, it makes me swoon, it makes me fall in love a little bit every single time that I read it. Liking Pride and Prejudice is just such a core part of my personality at this point. I love it so much. I love everything about it, and every time I reread it, I find new little moments that I didn't notice or fully appreciate before, and it makes me fall in love with this book all over again. You can call me basic if you want, but I feel like the reason this book is so iconic is because it's amazing. It's a wonderful piece of literature, and it has so much going on. It is great in so many different ways. I also think that I just have a personal connection to this book, which is why, even as I was reading all of Austen's other books, none of them could quite match Pride and Prejudice in my heart, because when I was little, when I was a wee lass, I had an illustrated version of Pride and Prejudice that I used to color in because I was 5. And it was one of the first classics, I say classics because it wasn't the full edition, it was made for children, that I ever read. And this book was just, it was my favorite even then. I loved Elizabeth. I sort of looked at her as a role model growing up. I wanted to be strong and independent and smart and witty like her. In the end, I think I ended up being more like Mr. Darcy, really socially awkward and a little bit resting bitch face, but that's besides the point. And I think this book was just such an inspiration to me in life that it was the book that made me a reader. The fact that I'm sitting here today filming this video on this YouTube channel for you guys, I feel like I owe that to Pride and Prejudice because it was just such a core part of who I am, and to this day it still is. Even though I love all of Jane Austen's other books, none of them will ever do for me what this book did for me because it had such a huge impact on my life and who I am. And this is all really sappy, but that's honestly how I feel. I'm the person I am today because I read this book. So, fellow Austen lovers, that is it for this video today. You can come fight me in the comments if you think I'm wrong. If you hate Mr. Darcy, you're wrong, but you can still say it in the comments if you want, and I'll go fight you over it. It's fine. Let me know, what is your favorite Austen novel? How would you rank these books if it was up to you. Thank you so much for watching this video. Give it a big thumbs up if you enjoyed, and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more from me. I post new bookish content every single Wednesday. My social media links are down below if you want to follow me on Tumblr, Instagram, or be my friend on Goodreads. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a glorious rest of your day. Bye, and I'll see you in the next video.